Kia ora, koutou, ko Madeleine Armstrong Wilcox toku ingoa. I'm the head of programs here at the Neurodiversity in Education Project. We operate the Building a Neuro-Inclusive School Network of Expertise, which is kindly funded by the Ministry of Education so that we can support you as educators to build your school as a more neuro-inclusive school. This session is all about transitions in schooling. And as we go on, I'll talk through some of the things we mean by that and what neurodivergent learners have told us, and some tips and tricks for you to support learners as they have a whole range of different transitions in their schooling experience. Thank you for taking the time to listen, tune in today. A karakia as we begin. Tu taua mai I runga, tu taua mai I raro, tu taua mai I roto, tu taua mai I waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa haumi e hui e tai ki e. And that karakia invites us from all of the places that we are joining from to collaborate, to come together and be strong together. Okay. As I said, we'll talk about what we're talking about when we're talking about transitions, why these might be a particular stressor for our neurodivergent learners, what learners have told us about transitions, and some supports that we might be able to offer. Okay. Key term time. You will know that when we talk about neuro inclusion, we're being quite specific and we're thinking about making sure every brain is noticed, every brain is supported, and every brain is celebrated in schooling. And when we dial that into transitions in schooling, it means we are thinking in advance of every brain. We're supporting them through transitions for every brain. And we're celebrating their success through transitions as much as we can. Okay. By transitions, what are we talking about? We're not just talking about transition into school, but that's obviously an important one. We're talking about changes in education, and that can be as simple as change in teacher, change in peer groups between one year and the next, a change in school, so starting school, but also ending in a context and starting a new one, because remember that ending is a change as well, and starting is another change. So it might be that transition from early childhood to primary, or from primary into intermediate, intermediate into second, etc. You get my point. A change in expectations as well. We hear often from our neurodivergent learners that they hit, for instance, intermediate schooling. They may be in the same school in a full primary, but suddenly the expectations are different. They are expected to stand up as leaders and be the role models, or they are expected to take on extra school duties like more road patrol and sports shed. And, these are small things, but that change in expectation can be really front of mind for some of our neurodivergent kids. Even our learners have told us changes in the physical environment of their school. So rebuilds, renovations, new classrooms, different classroom layout. And I mean, completely different, not shifting one thing to another. These are all examples of changes that our kids experience in school. Changes meaning transitions. I would invite you, as I do through all of this session, to ponder your own experiences as an educator, what other transitions you might see happening for students or for yourself as an educator as well. What changes are students experiencing? Okay, these transitions in schooling are usually inevitable. But when we think about our neurodivergent learners, these may cause some anxiety, some stress, some something or other. Not to say they definitely do, but let's just look at why that might be the case. So what we know is that our neurodivergent learners are characterized by their brain-based differences, and that we don't have to diagnose or identify, or although diagnosis and identification is super helpful, we can simply recognize the brain-based differences in our learners. We can think about those differences in terms of the different ways that their processing in their brain works, in terms of their sensory processing, their social processing, how they process, demonstrate, experience their emotions, as well as differences in their learning. So the whole picture, not just the learning and the academics. We know that, for instance, some of our learners who have differences in their sensory processing will take time to adapt to a new sensory environment. That's okay. That's just makes logical sense. And when we think about that, we think about changing into a new classroom at the start of a new year. It's a different sensory context. It's going to take time to process, unpack, work through what that means. So those brain-based differences obviously will cause some differences in the way that our neurodivergent kids respond during transitions, because transitions are a process, not a moment. We know that our neurodivergent kids have their own inherent amazing strengths and sticking points and their own inherent qualities. Some might just be inherently more adaptable. Some might be inherently more creative and can see different opportunities. Some might be inherently more energetic and will go and explore a new environment really well, whereas some might be more introverted. And that social change can be far more challenging or draining. So those factors as well are going to impact on how our neurodivergent students experience transitions, and also their different life experiences or different circumstances. So for kids who've experienced a lot of transitions and it's all gone really smoothly and it's all really straightforward, got this piece of cake. For some maybe who've experienced a more challenging transition or something they found uncomfortable, as part of that process, that memory will be sitting back there, impacting on how they are then creating emotions and experiencing emotions around transition. So all of those differences can build towards predictive stress. So prior to a transition, we might see our neurodivergent learners experiencing stress that's in advance, if that makes sense. They may experience anxiety, they may experience excitement, and may be really, really exciting, which is kind of a big emotion type response. They may experience a whole range of emotions. We know that many of our neurodivergent kiddos have big and intense emotions. They may be experiencing that. That all might add up to a little bit of overwhelm, all sorts of things. It's going to be unique. There's no all neurodivergent learners do it this way, but just to know that because of who our neurodivergent learners are, their brain-based differences, who they are as people, what they have already experienced, they may have non-typical responses to transitions. Okay, what do our kids tell us about transitions? So we went and asked our young neurodiversity champions, who are a group of young neurodivergent people that we work with and inform a lot of what we do. And we also asked a bunch of neurodivergent kids that we work with directly in our programs some of the things they tell us about transitions in schooling. First, that the little things really matter to them. Often as teachers, we're more in the big picture zone, sharing information and making sure our class lists are all nice and tidy and balanced and lovely and it's all going to work out. But for our kids, it's the tiny things that matter. I'll talk about some of the things that they have said in just a minute. And I invite you to think about what your neurodivergent learners in your context would add or take out to that list as well. Then the learning comes after that. The learning is like, whew, okay, after all these little things have been sorted, then I might start paying attention to some learning. They want to be well prepared, but they don't want to be scared. They don't want the stories of the grumpy teachers at high school will expect you to do blah, 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 or the strict teachers in year 7 will do blah, 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 or whatever. High school is going to be very hard and very challenging unless you do X, Y, Z. No scare tactics, just calm and cool and collected preparation. Just let us into the secret of what could be coming. And also we hear from whānau of neurodivergent learners that doing transitions differently can be fine and is fine and is kind of part and parcel of that experience of being a neurodivergent family. A great example of this from a family was around school visits and open days, transitioning from primary school to intermediate school, where the school has, weekend visits where families and kids are encouraged to come and look around the school on a Saturday morning and they, have a sausage sizzling or whatever, and you get to go and look in some classrooms. So there's that. But there's also the have a day at school day where all of the year sixes troop off and have a day in the intermediate school and they do classes and fun stuff. So a family we were speaking to said, we don't want to do the do-a-day because there are too many unknown factors for our child. Who will they go with? Who will they sit with? What will they be doing? Too many unknowns. It was causing a whole lot of anxiety. We don't want to do the weekend open day because a little bit chaotic, perhaps a little bit unstructured, not really sure about what's going to happen. But what we will do instead is have a visit on another day where it's just the one child visiting and get to pop into some classes. Have a visit any other weekend and just have a little walk around the school and get a sense of where the buildings are and where the field is and, places to sit and where things are happening. So doing those visits differently to suit the needs of their child, that's fine. And that's a great lesson for us as educators as well, that as much as we can set things up, those things may not work for everyone. That's fine. Are there ways we can make them work better? Or are there ways that we can really support people who are going to do it differently? Okay. Again, I invite you to hear, share, reflect on, think through what you have heard from neurodivergent learners and their families. Right, some of the little things our kids told us. There's a lot of little things. Where do I go? Where do I sit? What's my uniform going to be like? Is it all scratchy and weird? What kind of things do I need? Have I got the right school bag? Have I got the right pens? Will kids be having smiggle pencil cases, or is that uncool? What are the routines? What are the expectations? What's the bell going to sound like? What's my timetable? There are just so many things. Bathrooms are something that I forgot to put on this list, but are often top of mind. Where are they? What are they like? Are they nasty? Are they okay? Will I be able to go to the bathroom when I need to? Lots and lots and lots of little things. So for some of our neurodivergent learners who have brains that are really busy and that they work on a lot of details all at once, you can see how this kind of swarm of little things can add up to actually quite a lot of things to be worried about. We don't want to encourage kids to be worried, but we want to prepare to have some of these things that are laid out and easy in advance. Again, some of the things that our kids have told us around that transition, remembering that transition is about ending one thing and starting another. A lot of them talked about that kind of sadness if they were moving from a teacher that they really loved, that teacher who really gets them, they will be sad and they'll be grieving that teacher. This idea that sometimes our neurodivergent learners who are big thinkers, overthinkers, they don't use the term overthinkers, they just use thinkers. Some of those overthinkers might be worrying all summer long in that big transition. And that kind of culminates in some of that feeling of stress and overwhelm. I invite you also to reflect on what you might hear from your neurodivergent learners. And if you're really unsure, go and ask them. Gather some up and talk to them about it. What are the things you think about when you're thinking about moving on to next year, whatever next year looks like for them? Okay. So some of our top tips that our neurodivergent learners have also pitched in with. So really simple. We ask what might help, what doesn't help. We do things together. We share information and we recognize that transition is a process, not a moment. And that process can take a long time or a short time, but remembering that it's a timeline, not just a dot, is important. Okay, in terms of being prepared and not scaring kids, we can ask them and ask families, what is it that already works really well for you? What else could we do that might work? And what might help, right, in that period of transition? Making sure some of those basic little things are established. For some neurodivergent learners, it helps to have these things written on one piece of paper, not 15 pieces of paper and not with thousands of words, but literally one piece of paper. Your teacher will be, your classroom is here, you're going to sit here, whatever it is that you think and a child thinks is going to bring them certainty and security, if that is what they need, and a written piece of paper is helpful, do that. You'll know that once you ask them, will this help you? Right? You'll know if their modality is written or visual or talking through. So appeal to that. So get those basics really, really well locked in. Be flexible around visits. Like I shared in that example about open days and spend a day with your new school, be flexible around those expectations because those things might not work for everyone. Flexibility is key. Be flexible around timing of transitions. If we have any control over timing, think that through. For some kids, they want to be well prepared in advance, like well in advance. And for others, they're happy to find out in the last week of school what's going on for next year. Cool, go. You'll know if you ask. And be flexible about what kind of adjustments might need to be made in your thinking about transitions. Floaties and life rings. So I think this is a really important concept when we're thinking about how we can support our neurodivergent kids. So if we think of floaties, armbands when you're going swimming, that aren't the best for helping kids swim, but they just give that little bit of help. What are the things that you can set kids up with for that little bit of help? And it might be making sure your learners know about the things that really help them. So it might be conversations like, I've noticed that, and you might have noticed that when you're working, it really does help you to have a fidget handy. What do you think about that? Because we ask, what fidgets will you be taking with you to your next classroom? What tools might help, etc. So it's those little supports that are portable. They don't solve every problem ever in the universe, but they just give that little bit of extra support. So making sure that kids know that they have those supports, that you are setting kids up with those supports in advance as needed, and asking them through. And then life rings, helping kids and families as needed understand the plan B, right? If things don't work out perfectly on the first day, or they don't work out perfectly within the first 5 minutes, or whatever your time frame is, and you'll know what works for kids, particular kids, and what doesn't, what their plan B is, what to do if they get lost in their new school, what to do if they can't find a friend on the first day, what to do if their teacher is a bit odd in the eyes. What's the plan B? We also need to make sure the plan B isn't throw all your toys out of the cot and really go overboard. That the plan B is a little bit calm and patient, because we know change can be hard, and we know that sometimes we need to ride out the hard bits to get to the good bits. So that's not negating kids' experience of transitions as challenging. It's just making sure we take quite a considered and thoughtful approach to a plan B, which could be as simple as, how do you introduce yourself to someone? If you haven't made a friend yet, pick someone and do an introduction, right? And that can be a floaty as well. But making sure we have those backup plans. And the backup plans may just be in our heads. But it's good for kids who need that level of security, making sure we have plan B ready for them, and maybe plan C, and maybe plan D as well. Okay, but we do that with kids. We ask and we respond to the things that they're telling us. So that's very much a focus on kids. Let's turn the attention back onto ourselves for a moment. What do we need to do to make sure our kids are going to be successful, that we're setting them up for success with a new teacher or a new group or a new whatever it is over time? Making sure that we've thought that through and we are sharing realistic information and practical information throughout that change. Academic data is not the be-all and end-all. Think about if you're handing a child onto a new teacher, it's probably the most common transition that we experience as educators with our kids, making sure we really fill them in on the big stuff, not just the academics. In particular, what works really well for this child and what doesn't. So it saves that new teacher from starting from scratch with all of that. And what have you already tried that doesn't work? And you can say, don't bother trying this because we tried that and it didn't really work, right? Those little insights can be absolutely invaluable. So find a way to share that information with that new teacher. Super, super important. And if you're a school leader, think about how you can set up systems and structures to get that information flow through. That's not just in writing, because sometimes it's in conversation that information is shared really well and really honestly, and in a really direct way. So maybe there's some time that you could build in for your teachers to chat through those things that isn't on the teacher only day before school starts for the year. It's a little bit more in advance. And it's not during the first term of a new year, a little bit more in advance. But think about a structure or a system that you could put in place to support that realistic information sharing between teachers. Okay. Remembering our big picture is that we're noticing all of our different brains, we're supporting them and we're celebrating them. We're celebrating their the way they are working through transitions in their schooling, because change is constant and change is inevitable. So let's support everyone through that and celebrate their progress. Okay, I invite you to think about a takeaway, something you might try out, a key message that you're going to hold on to, write it down somewhere or pop it on your phone as a reminder so that it sticks for you. I'll also invite you to check out our website, join our community if you're not a member yet, neurodiversity.org.nz/BNS. And if you want to work with us, collaborate with us to support you, your team, your school, your cluster more, just get in touch. We'd love to help. Your feedback is really important to us. I just love if you've got your phone handy, click here, take a photo of the QR code, click through, leave us a little bit of feedback. We're not asking you to write a novel. There's just 2 or 3 really quick questions, and it really does help us understand what you need from us, because we're here to help you. Take a moment, click, hit pause if you're watching, click on, click through, and a karakia as we close. Kua mutu a mātou mahi mō tēnei wā, manakitia mai mā katoa, o mātou hoa, o mātou whānau, ao ki te aorangi. Thank you so much for spending some time with me, and I hope you have gathered up some thinking around how to better support your neurodivergent learners through transitions that they are inevitably going to face in their schooling. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.